Hey everyone, my name is Kathy and I am a pediatric nurse practitioner in primary care. And as you could probably tell by the title of this video, today I'm going to be making a video kind of explaining my experience, studying for the boards, taking the exam on test day, a little bit about everything that kind of goes with that, what I use, etc. I realized that when I was prepping for this exam, there's not a lot of information out there as to what I can expect, what can I use, because there's so many resources out there. I just kind of felt overwhelmed, which one should I take? Which one should I use to study? So I hope this video you guys may find helpful. And yeah, let's get started. So I have my little handy book here, or my notepad, and I think the first thing I want to talk with you guys about is the type of resources there are out there, and mostly what I used, the resources I used. The biggest thing is the Pediatric Nurse Practitioner Certification, also known as the Purple Book by Silbert Flag. This book is about $56. It's actually cheaper, since I remember it used to be around $90, but I think there's a sale going on right now, so it could be, the price is a little variable. But this Purple Book is so helpful. It has all with you need, very in-depth explanations. It gives you a summary of a lot of the topics with each system, really. I personally like this because at the end of the chapters, there is quizzes about anywhere from 20 to 68 questions around there. And it kind of just quizzes your knowledge. So it's just helpful. So, and now I'll explain how I studied, but those are some resources. The other one is the Pediatric Nurse Practitioner Certification Study Guidebook by Silbert Flag again. And I like to call this one the Orange Book. So this one's basically more just, review questions. So the Purple Book is your bread and butter. You have your chapters, they explain every little topic, and then you have your quiz. And this Orange Book has additional questions. It's just basically all questions. And this one is about $97 on Amazon. However, there's some used ones, $18. So trying to keep it, also not as expensive, because I know all of these resources, they add up for sure. And at the end, I'll kind of give you guys a rundown of how much I spent just to get prepared too. Also trying to make it affordable. So that's the second resource. The third resource that I really liked was Berkeley. The Berkeley and Associates, they have two things within it. So the first thing is the PNP audio streaming. And they give you access to that for about 90 days. But if you don't want that, there's also a way you can get a CD or something like that as well. I just did the audio streaming. They also have a home study part with that, and it talks about, evidence-based culture considerations, ethics, legal principles, which is also very important. And to be frank, when I was studying for this, I'm focused on diagnosis, on all of these different things, but I kind of forgot initially about evidence-based practice, kind of like the statistics side to it, the research base. That's also important on your exam, and it's about 8%, I believe. That's what I read on the Pncb, when they give you the summary of what's involved. So just make sure you review that as well. I personally listened to that lecture. I believe it was about 48 minutes, and I listened to it about 3 times. It should all be review. I am sure your program did a great job of explaining every topic to you, remembering with all of this that you already know this stuff. You took classes, you went to several lectures, took plenty of exams. So this is all review. It's not meant for you to learn first time, okay? But with all that said, just kind of taking a deep breath, telling yourself you're going to do great. I already know this stuff, and this is review. And I think that really helped me, because I kept reading things and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And then I kind of thought about it. I'm like, oh, wait, I already know this. This is review. Just telling yourself that that's that. And of course, reviewing information and topics that you may not have been perfect at in the beginning. And then that's also helpful too. So that's Barkley and Associates. I will say a little caveat on that is I'll show you guys the book actually. They delivered this to my house. It looks like this. And basically with this, it gives you topics on about what's going on in this book. I will say, however, some of the systems that I found were missing. I mean, it was included in parts of the chapters, but it wasn't specifically said. Was things like allergy, mental health, nutrition, infectious disease, pain, immunology, and rheumatology. So all of that, I did see it involved within the chapters of the other topics, but it wasn't specifically explained. So with those topics, I reviewed the Purple Book. And in the Purple Book, they also have, mental health. And I just read the chapters, did the questions, and just really made sure that I remembered, understood. With all of this, just keeping in mind, trying not to memorize. This is a certification for your career. You want to know this information. So again, we're not memorizing. We're really learning, understanding, and digesting the information. So that was that. Anyways, so those were some of the books and resources that I used. Actually, those 3 were the only ones I used, to be honest. So I know that there's more out there. I personally, my school, they said Barkley and Associates. They recommended that one. They found that a lot of people from our program was using that, and they were passing on the first try. So I just kind of went with that, and I actually ended up really liking that. Yeah. So now, ways that I studied. So the first thing, I kind of finished my program. I took a little trip, and then I sat down and I'm like, okay, now it's time to get studying. And ideally I wanted to give myself 4 weeks. 4 weeks to study, 3 to 4 weeks, knock it out. However, life gives you other plans. I ended up going to the lake for a week. So all in all, it took about 5 weeks to study because I did take around maybe 8 days off from that 5 weeks. I'm saying that because I am a person that likes to keep my planner. I'm saying on this day, I want to do this, 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 this. However, life doesn't always go that way. So just make sure you give whatever time you think you're going to take on the exam, just give yourself an extra week. It's okay. There's no pressure. You guys went this far. There's no reason to be pressured to take it. Don't compare yourself to anyone. Whenever you think you're ready, you'll take it, and then that's fine. I wanted to show you guys this because I had originally a plan of what I was going to study in September. Now, I thought I was going to take my exam September 29th. Again, like I said, life happened, so I actually didn't end up taking it till October 11th. And you guys can do the math there, but yeah, that's when I took it, and it is okay. What I also had I put things like the topics that I wanted to review on each day. That didn't happen. So again, that is okay. It's good to have a plan of what you want to study on what days, but don't be too hard on yourself if you can't get to it. Just as long as you do get to it later on. But that's that. So the first thing I did is on Barkley and Associates, they actually have separate diagnostic readiness tests, and those cost about $30. So I bought one of those, and I just did it without studying anything. That was my first exam, and then I just sat through it, did it. I timed myself. I believe it gives you 100 questions, and I tried to give myself an hour and a half, just to kind of resemble the future exam. And of course, it didn't take that long. However, with those 100 questions, I kind of kept in mind, as I was going through them, oh yeah, I need to study that topic. And then I had a little notepad. And then on that notepad, I kind of started writing down topics that, I kind of wanted to go over. And then once I got my report back, I finished that exam. I really liked this test because they gave you a detailed report. They gave you by subject, and then they gave you percentages of how many of those questions you got right. Afterwards, they also give you a detailed report on the different age groups, and then you can kind of see what age group specifically I also need a little bit of work on. So I saw that and I'm like, okay, so this is how I'm going to plan out my study plan. I saw the topics that I needed a little bit more work at, and then the ones I pretty much knew. Because if you already know them, again, all of this is review. If you already know the information, there's no need to spend several hours, days on that topic. You already know it, so that's great. You can still review it, but spend more of your time on the subjects that you need a little more work on. So I did that, and then after I took that, that exam, test, I read the rationales. It's always important to read the rationales, because reading the rationales tells you why or why not a question is right and why it's wrong. And I found myself that, okay, press next, and then I would read the rationale. I'm like, oh, I got it right this way. But I found that I wasn't reading why it was wrong, or why certain other, responses were wrong. And that's important because that information can be part of another question. So just making sure you read the rationales. I think that's something I could have been better at first in my first diagnostic readiness test, but I definitely improved when I took some other tests later on. And yeah, so all of that, it can give you a good idea, and then you can review that way, make that plan. After I did my plan of what topics, I'm going to review from what day to what day, I listened to the audio lectures from Barkley & Associates, and I kind of went through my plan from the topics I needed the most work at to the least. Also keeping in mind that, Pncb gives you topics of, they rank it by numbers. And I just screenshotted it and I put it on my, my little iPad, and I kind of, went through it and made sure I reviewed every topic as I was going through them. So that was those audio, the audio was anywhere from 12 minutes to, I would say, like an hour and a half. And again, this is review, so sometimes I listen to my audios when I was cooking dinner, when I was eating breakfast, making it fun. You're probably already done with your program. Now it's time to study for your boards, but it's also time to relax. You did it. You finished your program. So I just try to make this process as least stressful as I can, because I too have test anxiety. It happens to everyone. Well, if you don't get it, congrats, that's awesome for you, but it happens to a lot of people, and I just wanted to make it as relaxed as possible. So I would do it for breakfast, and then of course I had to sit down, focus. I'd paint my nails while I was listening to it, just making it fun. I'd go on the treadmill and listen to it. And then I made sure I reviewed all of those topics, and then to the topics that was missed that I mentioned before, and you're going to see it too. That's when I would go on the purple book, review that chapter, and then take those questions. Important to note that for every topic that I reviewed, including, the first Barkley topics, even when I would finish an audio lecture there, I then went to the purple book and I took that quiz. So for example, if I reviewed cardiovascular issues and disorders on the Barkley Associate book, I reviewed that, I listened to it, then I would go to the purple book, kind of just skim over, the chapters. And if there's a topic on the purple book that wasn't mentioned on Barkley, I would review that, and then I would take that quiz. So I did that for all of the topics, including the ones that weren't on Barkley. I always went to the purple book and took some questions. If I felt that that topic, I'm like, I got a good amount of questions wrong there or anything like that, that's when I would go to the orange book and just practice a little bit more questions there. Some of those questions were repetitive from the purple book, but if you can find it used, I think it'd be helpful. If you don't really find it used, then up to you. Also trying to keep it as not expensive as possible. So from there, then once I reviewed everything, I took all the questions in the purple book. I then took another diagnostic readiness test on Barkley just to see how I improved. Keeping in mind that that doesn't test for everything, but I like that test because it gives you a good report. Percentages of what you're getting right versus what you're, need a little bit more work at. So I did that. I'm like, okay, great. I improved a lot on, let's say, gastro. That's awesome. But now what do I need to improve on a little bit? So then you kind of go from that and you make another plan. And let's see. And after all of that, after I took my diagnostic readiness test, that second one, I reviewed the rationale. I reviewed the topics that I needed a little bit more work on. And that whole process, I want to say, listening to all the lectures, doing all those questions, taking that initial diagnostic readiness test, that second one after I reviewed everything, probably took about 3 weeks. Of course, keeping in mind that life happens and some days you can't study as much as you'd hope. Each day I tried to study for at least, 3 to 5 hours. Sometimes more, sometimes less, depends really on the day. And from that, I continued on. So then that last week, I really buckled down. I'm like, okay, I am going to take it the next day, the next week. I really have to focus on these topics and just review those stuff. So then I took all 3 Pncb exams. Obviously not all on the same day. So Pncb is great because they offer different exams. 2 of those are 75 questions with rationales. They cost about $50 each. And then there's another exam that costs about $25 and it's 50 questions. And unfortunately that one doesn't give you rationales, but it tells you if you got it right or wrong. So you can just kind of review it by yourself and see what would the right answer be. So I did that. Maybe I spread that out over the course of like a week. So let's say on Sunday, I took that first 601 75 question, read the rationales. And as I was reading the rationales, if there was something, specifically read the rationales on the Pncb exams. Those, they go through other things, other topics, and the rationales. Just do that, and whatever I felt that I needed a little bit more work on, I would just write it down. Let's say it was a topic like developmental milestones. Okay, what does a 3-year-old do in gross motor? Just a question, I would write that down and I'd review that before getting back to the next answer on the rationale, like reviewing more questions on the rationales. And I just kind of, sit through it, write down keywords. I'm not writing down a whole paragraph or a whole, PowerPoint slide, basically. I'm just writing down key points and like, okay, that jogged my memory. I understand what that is saying. But I keep track of the questions and topics that I needed to review a little bit more. And all in all, after I finished all rationales, I did all 3 exams over the course of that 1 week. I had like 6 pages written down of little topics. I'm like, okay, I want to review those. Also, one of the reasons I wanted to do that is because towards the end of my studying, these were the topics that I continued to, needed a little bit more work on. So that's what I wanted to review 2 days before the exam. And I'll talk about that. Or you can have a Google Doc worksheet. I also had that I named it topics to review. So I had kind of both. So then after that, so I did that week, and then I had, from my exam day, I took it on Wednesday. On Monday is when I did all the rationales. I'm getting certain scores that I want to get. At that point, that's when I reviewed all the topics that I wrote down on my Google Doc spreadsheet. I reviewed all the, topics I wrote down on my yellow, the different little worksheets. And I just reviewed all those the day before. I reviewed all of that. Maybe something I wanted to go over a little bit more, but I'm not overthinking it. The biggest thing here is I know it's a stressful thing, but try as much as possible to just relax. This information, and it's easier said than done. The reason I wanted to make this video is because I wanted to be as transparent as possible. I took it on Wednesday, the exam, and then on Monday, and then Tuesday. Monday, I think I reviewed for like 8 hours. Just to review those topics. I did that last diagnostic test, and reviewed those rationales. And that's when I was like, oh my goodness, like, I was kind of psyching myself out, like, tomorrow's the last day to study, and then I'd take it on Wednesday. And then I just kind of talked to myself, you already know this information, this is all review. And there is such a thing, and even my program director told us, there is such a thing as overstudying. And it kind of felt that I was doing that. I already know this information, I'm simply reviewing it, and I didn't want to psych myself out. So I knew it was getting to a point where I was overstudying, doing every little nitpicky topic, and that's when I kind of said enough. So, so that's when I decided just to do those topics. I already reviewed all the other topics a couple times. And then Tuesday, very easy day for me. I simply maybe reviewed a couple things. All in all, I think I reviewed for a total of an hour and a half, 2 hours max, but not like in a sitting. I would eat breakfast, review for like 20-30 minutes, paint my nails, review for like 30 minutes, do my makeup, review for 30 minutes, and that's it. Took it very easy. And then that same day, had dinner, and then I went to actually go play Top Golf just to distract myself. I wanted to be as chill and calm as possible for the next day. So I did things to keep me entertained. I did Top Golf. I played dominoes with my husband, and then I fell asleep. I went to bed. I was all relaxed from such a fun day that I went to sleep fine. Normally, with big tests, I do have, sometimes I'm a human, little trouble sleeping the night before. So I luckily never happened before, but I went to bed at around 12:30 at night, and then I woke up at 9:30, 9 hours of sleep, which I was so surprised I did. And I know probably some of you are asking yourself, oh my gosh, you went to bed at 12:30. I am a night owl. It happens. But the way I did that was, when you schedule your exam, at least where I live, there was like some exams at 8 in the morning and some exams at 12 p.m. I knew right away I wanted a 12 p.m. slot. So I'm just not a morning person. If you are, amazing. You should definitely do those times. I personally didn't want to stress myself out. Again, as least stressful as possible. I didn't want to stress myself out, so I just took the 12 p.m. Had nothing else to do that day. They say get there 30 minutes before. So if my exam was at 12, I got there at 11:15, just because I just wanted to be there earlier, use the bathroom, get all that stuff ready, drink some water. And then as soon as I was done, they actually, checked me in and did all of that stuff, and I was ready to go. I think I started taking my exam around 11:40, so that was nice. And then I made sure that day I dressed really comfortable. I wanted to be as relaxed as possible. I didn't drink coffee that morning, and I'm a big coffee person. Did not want to have any added nerves, anxiety, whatever, increased heart rate. So I did not drink coffee. I had a very light breakfast. I drank some water. I didn't want to drink too much. I believe you are allowed to use the bathroom. I didn't, but I just didn't want to risk it. And yeah, I wore really comfortable clothes, a nice little sweater, a zipper, just in case I get hot, I can take it off, leggings. And I actually straightened my hair. I did my makeup that day because I really believe in look good, feel good. So I just try to make it a fun day. And yeah, I took that exam. It takes about 3 hours. And during it, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, oh my goodness, this is stressful. It's a lot of questions, 175 questions. 25 of them are not added to your grade or something like that. It's taken into account for future ones. But when I would feel flustered, I kind of just stopped what I was doing. And if I felt my brain going 100 miles an hour, I kind of stopped what I was doing, take a couple deep breaths. Actually, Pncb has a PowerPoint on their website that says, tips for test taking. And I read that actually the day before my exam. And it was so helpful. I remembered that the following day, I did the breathing techniques. They have this thing where you tense your body and then you untense to kind of relax. So when I find myself taking the exam, I didn't want to rush it. I usually rush exams just to get it over with because I find that's helpful for me for answering questions. That way I don't double think. But for this one, I wanted to take my time, really read the question. I highly recommend the tips on test taking strategies from Pncb. Yeah, I read my question. If I ever had questions on them, I flagged them and I came back to it at the end. I didn't want to overthink. Again, I think, as you guys can tell, the thing I wanted to be here is just the most relaxed as possible in a stressful situation. So then, whatever, I maybe took like a couple little breathing breaks, maybe 3 times during the exam just to relax. I finished. I saw pass. Actually, it was quite funny how I saw pass. I was like very, very nervous. I barely could look and I kind of just like peeked and then I saw pass and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I got out of there and then it's a big thing. So I was so excited, called my parents, called my husband. And then I went to go visit my sister in her college. Her college is really near my testing center. So I went to go visit her. We had lunch and, or early dinner, late lunch, and just try to relax. I got a gnarly tension headache that night because, I was trying to keep as relaxed as possible, but it's hard. But then I really took it easy that night, relaxed, just mental break. Because that's huge. My husband was putting it as the way that's your last exam. I've been going to school since I was very little, and that was it. So, just something to sink in. It takes time. I'm still processing. I'm so used to studying, doing something in terms of school. That's why I guess I'm starting to make videos because I am bored until I start my job. And I was like, hey, all of this information, I wish someone knew. I spent hours on Reddit. Well, not hours, but like an hour or two on Reddit. I guess it's hours. I Googled, I watched other YouTube videos. Others were also helpful. And I said, if I could relay any information to future students, future, PNP certified providers, I would love to help. So that's what I am doing. And a couple other things. I know this video is getting a little long, but if you guys want to stop the video, feel free. The next things I'm going to talk about is a little bit of extra things you could do for the exam if you're finding yourself if you're saying to yourself, wow, Kathy, that's awesome that you did that, but I feel like I need more help with test taking strategies, or I don't think that's enough for me or whatever. So here's a couple of more things you could use. With all that digging that I did on Reddit, Google, talking to people, some people used Rush Review, some people did Pocket Prep, and some people did Board Vitals. In all transparency again, I actually paid for Board Vitals. Now, in hindsight, it was helpful. I just think the questions there were very detailed compared to Barkley and PNCB. So some of the questions that I was doing on Board Vitals, I was getting flustered, and I think that's towards the last week of my studying. I was like, oh my gosh, am I ready? Because I think the Board Vital questions were a lot harder than the Pncb. Being mindful that on the Board Vitals, they give you easy, medium, hard questions. So after doing that, I was like, okay, these look harder than the practice tests I did on Pncb. So I just started doing the easy media mode on Board Vitals, and I just kind of skipped the hard questions unless I needed more extra help on some things. They have about 1,238 questions, and they divide it by topics. Completely frank, I only did about 230 of those questions. And I think for me personally, it helped a lot of people, which is great. But for me personally, I think it just added to my anxiety because I was getting some of those questions wrong. But that's why I then switched to the easy media mode, and it was a lot better. In hindsight, that's like $100-something. I think I would have been okay without buying that. But other people liked it, so that's great for them. Maybe they needed extra help. But I think with that purple book, that orange book that I talked about, the Barkley and Associates, and reviewing that, I think that's enough. Again, you already took classes, you already did your program. This is all review. But if you need extra help on, and you need extra help on answering questions, test taking, that's great. I would recommend, I tried out Rosh Review too, and then I tried Pocket Prep. Some people love Pocket Prep. I think out of all those three, I just kind of like Board Vitals better for me. But even then, it all depends on how much money you are willing to spend in preparation for the exam. If you have, if you're lucky and you have more, that's great, and you can do that. But if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm on a budget, I would really encourage you to get the purple book. You can get it used. You can get the Barkley and Associates. Do a couple of diagnostic tests there. Those are only $25. I know some people are saying like they don't do everything, but that's what I'm saying. Also do the purple book. And if you have, you're like, okay, I have a little bit more, then I would do Board Vitals. It depends on you, but this is just my take on it. They're all great. Different people do different things, and that's amazing. Different people study different ways. But anyway, so those are some of those things. Other things that I did, I think to develop, developmental milestones. That's always a good review. Very, have your little book handy. But one thing that I wanted to do too is I went to the CDC, and I just reviewed the milestones there. They also have great videos there too, depending on the age. And I just kind of, at night as I was relaxing, watching The Bachelor or whatever, don't judge for watching The Bachelor. I just kind of, went through the milestones and just made it fun. I also made myself a quiz on the milestones. Let me know if you guys want that. It's a very simple, 1-page quiz type thing on the milestones. The answers are, I used from Barkley, but it was just my own personal quiz. And I kind of reviewed that. I made my husband quiz me at night, like maybe twice. I'm like, okay, like ask me those questions. I'll tell you the answers and just highlight which I got wrong. So I'll make sure to review. I know there's Quizlets out there. That's great too for those who want to do that. I just personally, I was getting overwhelmed at the end because there's so much resources to utilize. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, every resource has something. And then I think that's when I was like, that's enough. Like, you did the purple book, you did Barkley, you did some questions on the orange book, you did a little bit on Board Vitals. That's enough. You're good. So Quizlet, I think it's helpful if you also want to know the main things within a topic. Some people find that really helpful. I personally didn't look at them, maybe like for one topic, but I think it just added to my stress. But if some people need it, that's that resource that's out there, and that's great. Other things, Pncb on one of their resources, they do say if you pick a book, stick to one. And they, like, I think it had it capitalized too. And as I read that initially, like in the beginning of my process, I'm like, oh my gosh, like only one? How is that possible? But then as I was ending my studies, I realized I'm like, I should have done that. Like it's making me anxious. There's so much out there. That's when I kind of told myself just stick to those that I talked about. There is a thing as overstudying that I mentioned. Don't be, your enemy. Like, you got this. You went through the program. You're doing all of this. You're doing as much as possible. Don't overstudy either. Don't memorize questions, from like the Pncb or Barkley. Every question is different. Make sure you're not memorizing, you're understanding the information. Because in the end, you're going to see patients with these topics, and you're not going to like memorize, you want to understand. You want to see, for example, a Christmas tree pattern on their back. Oh, I know what that is. Oh, they have a little like herald patch. Oh, I know what that is. Not just like memorizing things, but really understanding it. Like, what are their symptoms from this, etc. Yeah, so I think that is pretty much what I wanted to discuss with you guys. I told you about the day of my exam. I have my iPad here, and I know I got it for school, and I just try to use it as much as possible because it was pricey. And on here, I'll be frank with you guys, I like made a little I screenshotted the thing from Pncb. I checked off every topic that I went through to make sure. I would do little percentages on the side of them saying like what I got on the first diagnostic test versus the second, and that way I can know which areas to improve on or which areas like I'm forgetting a little bit and want to review a little more. When you take the Pncb test, they give you like a smaller analysis. Like they kind of divide it up into health promotion, assessment and diagnosis, management, and professional issues, and they kind of give you the score that way. So that was also helpful. I just really like the Berkeley reports. And again, that's pretty much what I did. I wish you guys the best of luck taking this. If I can give you, quick little tips is you guys got this. You did a whole program. This is all meant to be review. I do have test taking strategies and things that I did during my program that I actually used during this study process that I can make another video of if you guys are interested. I did decently well in school, so I think I changed my type of studying a lot when I was in grad school. So if you guys need advice there, I'd love to do that too. Just let me know in the comments. Yeah. All right. Well, I hope this was helpful for all of you. And I think the last thing I wanted to mention is the reason I mentioned that was because as I was going through my program, I would always make Google Docs of the topics, and I would highlight the key points throughout my program. So I just did that for myself, as I was reviewing for exams and whatnot. And when I would find an area where I'm like, oh, I remember something like that, I would just kind of go back to my Google Docs, search that word, phrase, whatever, and then go from that way. So that's another little thing that I did. But anyways, all right. Well, I wish you guys the best of luck studying for this exam. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I'd love to help with my knowledge that I know. But yeah, all of this, again, was my point of view. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Bye.